right, what is up, everybody, and welcome back to the second installment of the Brain Forge
Let's
Book
go.
Club.
Let's go.
You already know what we got going on. We are reading this book right here, Limitless by Jim Kwik. As it says on the cover, upgrade your brain, learn anything faster, and unlock your exceptional life. We are covering part 2 today, as we mentioned last time. That was what we were going to be reading next. No need to ramble. Let's just jump right in and hear you guys' overall opinion of the part. Noah, what do you got for us?
Quick way. Let's get it.
Yeah, so I thought it was just it was definitely a little bit tougher to get started with, but then once it got going, it really illustrated well, I think, how to have a proper mindset going into pretty much anything and how to make sure that you can convince yourself first and foremost that you are capable of amazing things. What about you, Eric?
I think part two, I love part two so far. I mean, I feel like this book just keeps getting better and better. Part two just really breaks down the whole grand scheme of things from what we learned from the first part. So as of right now, I like it a lot. That's my general opinion. What about you, Cody?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with what Noah was saying. When it first started out, I was like, man, this is kind of a little anticlimactic from where we left on off on part 1. But then there was a story that really quickly grabbed me at the beginning. It was like on the second page of the reading, where he talks about the elephant. The elephant is a baby, and when the elephant's a baby, it's just a little rope and a stake in the ground holding the elephant. And when it's a baby, it's too weak to pull that stake out of the ground. So it's called learned helplessness. As that elephant grows, it becomes plenty strong to either break that rope or pull the stake out of the ground. But because it learned as a baby that it wasn't strong enough to do that, that stuck with it for the rest of its life, just like, the boy with the broken brain from part 1. But
Yeah.
those are the things that you have to let go. Learned helplessness is, it's not something that we need in our life at all. Just don't let those thoughts win.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So has anybody had any personal relation or, had any type of, related feelings to your life from what you read so far? If that makes sense. Let me rephrase that.
I mean,
No, I got you.
no, that's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Go ahead, Noah.
Oh, I was gonna say for me, it just really was kind of eye-opening, that fact that like intelligence or greatness isn't really contained within one separate thing. I mean, like he talks about how we all immediately think of Albert Einstein or like Stephen Hawking or something, but what it turns out to be is that everybody in their own right is a genius. Of like, I mean, when you look at like Derrick Rose, I mean, he was a brilliant person in terms of like scoring and taking nice layups and just making these beautiful basketball shots. So it's just like, I mean, you can't really contain or put anyone into one box and then say that's one thing. And then they had a great quote at the start where he says, from Albert Einstein, of everybody is a genius, but if you would judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will have lived its whole life believing that it's stupid. And that one just
Yeah.
kind of really hit close to home for me there.
Yeah.
What about you, Cody?
Yeah, personal relations, I mean, kind of very similar thought process to what you were having is kind of what I was thinking. Uh, with the genius thing, like you said, everyone immediately goes to Einstein or Stephen Hawking or people like that. But he talks about the 4 expressions of genius, one of which is dynamo genius, which is the intellectuals, the creativity, the Einsteins, the Hawkings, like we were talking about before. He talks about blaze genius, people skills, the ability to connect with people. Tempo genius, the person who is optimistic and persistent, like a Nelson Mandela, the person who can see the bigger picture and never give up on their vision. And then he talks about the last one, the steel genius. Those are the people that are able to find the small details that other people are missing out on. A person like Sergey Brin, who is a co-founder of Google, who spent hours researching and came up with the largest search engine in the world that we know now.
Yeah, 100%. I think some of personal things I've had throughout this book was some of the 7 lies he talks about in the book, especially like not lie number 3. It says mistakes are failures, and just it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but if you let your mistakes bring you down, it's gonna set this barrier for you can't think outside of that mistake. You're gonna think you're dumb. You're gonna think some other way, and you just gotta break that and like really learn that mistakes is all a lesson at the end of the day. So yeah.
So what one thing we wanted to cover, guys, that we had read in part 1 was the different learning techniques. So we all decided we would try those learning techniques with part 2. The first learning technique we're going to be covering is the Pomodoro technique, which Noah spoke briefly about in part 1. And what the Pomodoro technique entails is, as he said before, people are known to typically retain the most information at the beginning and at the end of their study sessions, and the things during the middle tend to have a little bit of a fall off, kind of like a U shape on a standard bar graph. But what is suggested is you do 25-minute intervals of studying time, then you take a 5-minute break. During that 5-minute break, just relax, do what you got to do, maybe jot down some notes about what you just learned, and then go back to it. And what they found was people were able to retain a lot more information doing it this way. And Noah, I think you've been practicing that. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so just trying to, especially when I started reading this chapter, just trying to break it into just these 25-minute segments and then followed by a short break. And I ended up, it was kind of late when I started reading, but so I got through one cycle, and then I read for another 25 minutes, and I could just kind of feel myself getting not really retaining all the information. And so I took a break and then only had 5 minutes, only had about 10, 15 pages left. And when I read that today, it was just much easier to get through because I was able to limit down to uh, just this small amount of space where I could just retain the beginning of it and then pretty much not have any of this middle for going down. But yeah, Eric, did you do anything for out of the first chapter for helping you
Yeah,
read this one?
I've been using the learning method, and it's called FASTER. The acronym is called FASTER, and it breaks down to F is forget, A act, S state, T teach, E enter, R review. And I've been honestly trying to use and incorporate at least 2 of them throughout the whole day, right? Just really trying to use my knowledge and what I see on this book and use them to like in real life. But the 2 I've been using so far is F, which is forget. Just really trying to forget the old way of thinking. I feel like for myself, I think I know everything, but I really don't, right? It's just so that will help me, soak everything in more like a sponge than thinking I've already have everything figured out. You know what I'm saying? And then S is state, and what state means is like just changing your state of mind, thinking more positive. And, of course, when you're bored or hate what you're doing, you're not gonna have fun. So when you really change the state of mind and be more positive, like I was explaining to Noah earlier when Cody was upstairs, I just got so much more done today. I feel like I accomplished more because I had a better mindset. So that's pretty much what I've been using so far.
It's a great implementation of it.
Yeah.
Definitely am interested to learn more about faster for sure. I was
Yeah.
more on
It's
the Pomodoro technique, but yeah, I like the different steps. The one thing I did really like about the faster technique was learning with the intent to teach. Teach that you had talked about. I thought that was really cool because that's kind of the way I take in information a lot of the time is as it's being taught to me. While I'm taking in the information, I'm also thinking of maybe there's a more efficient way and learning it maybe in my own efficient way with the intent of maybe teaching it that way to someone else later on.
That's it. And in the book, it says you learn it twice when you do it like that. You're
Yeah,
learning yourself with the intention to teach somebody else. So when you teach somebody else, you learn a second time. So
Reinforcing
it's
that
beautiful.
idea.
Yep. 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 Does anybody have a favorite part of the book or section of the book that you guys would like to share?
Yeah, I really liked the especially trying to get to like reframe your limiting beliefs was a really cool part, especially about like the three keys. I mean, it's a step-by-step guide on how to be able to make how to be able to like get yourself to be in the position where you can actually think very in a positive way about any issues you had. And one thing that even helped for me was just to say, like, even if something doesn't seem just extremely monumental, is just to add in, like, instead of saying I can't do something, I can't do it right now. And that, at least for me, seems like it might be sticking for a little while. But what about you, Cody?
Uh, Me and you are just two peas in a pod on this part, bro. I'm telling you. I mean, like everything that you're saying, we had a lot of the same takeaways. But just kind of add on to what you were saying there. My dad always had this saying growing up. He would always say, "Can't, never, could do anything," right? So, I mean, if you're
Mm.
always saying you can't, then you never can, and that's one of the things that's reinforced in this chapter is like you said, just overcoming those limiting thoughts, and he called it your inner critic, correct? Your inner critic.
Critic, yep.
Yeah, your inner critic. So just to break that down for you guys, that's that little voice in your head. The most common way that I think most people will be able to relate to it is when you're working out and you're doing bench and you're on that last set and your chest is burning. You have 2 more reps, and a lot of people are going to quit right there because their little voice in their head is telling them, "Oh, just stop because it's too hard." But that translates over into everything you do. That one little battle right there where you let that inner critic win, the next time it's going to be easier for that inner critic to win. And so you just have to fight through that and keep going.
100%.
Eric?
I think one of my favorite parts of the book, and I would love to emphasize this, and I want to emphasize how he really shows you how important it is to watch what you say to kids. Because him as a youngster, he was put in this little hole where he thought he couldn't really think or learn like the other kids around the room, excuse me. Um, and where I'm going with this is that the way we think is all ingrained as we were younger, whether it's taught from your parents or especially at school, because we're at school most of the time throughout your whole life. So again, for everybody who's watching, make these mistakes and see them as a learning rather than a failure. You know what I'm saying? Just God, I love that part. He's just always talking about how you just be careful what you say to kids. Kids are really gonna take that and like hold it for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of my favorite parts of the book.
As he said another thing kind of in relation to that, with kids are able to learn a lot faster than we are because they're kids and they know they don't know. And that also goes back to your learning method faster with forget what you
Yep.
think you know and just learn. That's all you
Yep.
got to do. If you know you don't
Yep.
know, then it's so much easier to learn.
Just makes those mistakes easier to disappear too. And like I
That's
mean,
it.
and you can still have great success from mistakes. I mean, I like continuing, I guess, with the Einstein theme is that like I studied some physics in college, and like Einstein at one point was trying to disprove quantum mechanics because he didn't like it a lot. And everybody at home, quantum mechanics is like the study of very small stuff like atoms and everything. And but he ended up trying to disprove it, and that mistake ended up proving it and producing a lot of
Wow.
this really big aspect of this whole area of science, and that all came from a mistake. So, I mean, mistakes can also just be really beautiful too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is pretty awesome. Just again, if we're talking Einstein, one of the quotes that I have written down here from the chapter is a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. So like Eric said, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Your mistakes aren't losses. There are really no losses. You either win or you learn, and you just keep going. And then another quote that wasn't in the book, but I just happen to really like it, and I think it relates, comes from Thomas Edison. No, what's he famous for? What did he do?
He made the light bulb.
He sure did. He created the light bulb. And Thomas Edison's quote is, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just found out 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb.
Mm.
Oof.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, and that's
Mm.
it. That's pretty
Short
legit.
quote.
That's pretty legit.
Yeah, that is legit. That goes to what you were saying in part one, Noah, is how do these people that have created any something or became a person of a certain stature, what was the thought process? You know what I'm saying? And
Exactly. Yeah.
he just
I
broke down
mean,
one from Sir Thomas, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
That
Like, I mean,
was
how?
good.
Yeah. How did he like learn from his mistakes? Yeah. Exactly.
All right, last question here, guys. What would you recommend to someone who is not currently reading this book?
I
That
would
could be.
definitely say just to try to just resize your own beliefs of what you're capable of. Like, I mean, is if you can't even just get rid of them, just to try to at least make them a little bit bigger, like push a little bit higher, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And just to at least just make a plan for what you can tell yourself in the future for how to actually change how you perceive yourself. And so that's what I'd say. What about you, Eric?
I think the one thing people can learn from this book and what I can say for what I've read so far is we've all thought knowledge was power. And to this day, people still think knowledge is power. And it's very true. But knowledge without action, you're not going too far. So make sure you take action of what you've learned and just really incorporate helping others with, just daily tasks, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. Just yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I would say my recommendation for someone not reading this book would just be the power of positive thinking. Too many people, I think, go throughout their day and are just looking at all the negatives. But if you were to go out throughout your day looking at all the positives, for example, there's an experiment that comes to mind. I couldn't tell you who did the experiment or when it was done. I just remember reading about it, and they were able to interview these people who had commutes back and forth to work, and they found that people were almost always able to recall how many red lights they stopped at on the way to work, but they could never recall how many green lights they passed through on the way to work. And that's just, people absorbing those negative thoughts and letting those affect their day rather than thinking the positives of, oh, there's a green light that I just strolled right through, right? So another good way to look at it, this is from a guy named Charlie Rocket. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he calls it a winning streak. And the winning streak is basically just compiling all those little small W's throughout the day into one. And then so at the end of the day, you can look back and you had all those little W's, like, oh man, I got 3 green lights. Oh man, I got my favorite food for lunch today. But yeah, that's what I would recommend to someone. And I think that about wraps it up. I think this was a great session, guys. Remember, the book, guys, right here, Limitless by Jim Kwik. Upgrade your brain, learn anything faster, and unlock your exceptional life. If you guys want to read along, we will drop a link down in the description on where you can find this book. Please feel free to leave your comments, answer our questions. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. If you want to read along, grab the book, and we are going to be reading part 3, which is chapters 7 through 10, and that's what we will be discussing in the next meeting. Thanks for watching.
Make sure you catch up. Let's go.
Peace.
Yes.